It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza, good morning.
Hello, Irwin.
It's actually morphing into afternoon, but we'll call it morning anyway.
Yes, we changed it up a little
exactly.
bit, but that's how we roll. And yeah, so play ball, Irwin.
Play ball. Wow, what a segue. Esperanza. Before we came on the air, Esperanza and I were talking. If I should give a little bit of personal stuff with this episode, sometimes I say yes, no, but I am going to blend it in. What we're talking about is Carl Yastrzemski. Honestly, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, a first ballot Hall of Famer, meaning he got into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility, played his entire career with the Boston Red Sox. But really, this storyline is about Carl Yastrzemski, who was born and raised in Bridgehampton, Long Island, Esperanza.
Indeed.
And we talked.
The son of a potato farmer. Bridgehampton Loam. We always talk about.
Esperanza, I have a list of literally how many tie-ins and references we can make to prior Our Hamptons podcast talking about a Hall of Fame baseball player. You just mentioned one, Bridgehampton Loam, the farming community that was Bridgehampton during this era.
Yes.
Right? And with many Polish-American farmers that were really farming that land, the Yastrzemski family.
Correct, especially around this time, that influx of Polish families, yeah.
Exactly right.
A century.
Completely true. But other stories that perhaps we haven't always touched on and maybe should have, the incredible sports legacy of Bridgehampton High School,
Bridgehampton School. I mean,
Bridgehampton School.
High school, because that is a full-on school from, I think, kindergarten through high school, isn't it?
And
maybe not.
Right. But those Killer Bees, as their team name is called,
they are killer.
have won numerous high school basketball championships, competing against much larger schools. Sometimes they didn't even have a full 12-man roster on the team, and yet they still won titles. So the legacy is just enormous. So there are really so many tie-ins here, with the common denominator being talking about an absolute Hall of Fame, one of the greatest ball players of all time. And one other connection, Esperanza, we should make, how Eastern Long Island, at a certain period of time, was more akin to New England than it was to Metro New York City area, right?
Right. Makes sense completely with this particular personality that we're exploring. Yeah.
Right. There were, remember, if you recall, we did an episode about television or lack thereof in the not too distant past.
Radio, television.
Right.
Yes.
And you weren't necessarily getting channels from New York City. You were getting them from Providence or Hartford.
Listen, I think we've talked about this. You Google, I don't know, where the nearest XYZ
Home Depot, right.
Home Depot, yeah. Exactly. Like big box store is. And the first things that come up are places in Connecticut.
Yes. Yeah. So there's there's always been, so in addition to all these, that's really what makes it such a compelling story, all of those tie-ins. But look, we're not a baseball podcast. We're not a sports podcast, but we have to give a little background of Carl Yastrzemski just to really tell our audience, this guy was a superstar. I mean, he was born 1939, Southampton Hospital, I'm going to assume, because it says here, Southampton, New York, right off of his website, August of 1939. Means he's turning 87 this summer. Grew up, son of a potato farmer, in Bridgehampton, Long Island. Bridgehampton High School alum. Numerous, and we'll get into this in a little while, numerous records in baseball, but not only baseball, football and basketball. Basketball player, set the all-time individual conference scoring record of 628 points. Hit 5 his career at Bridgehampton High School. Esperanza claims she's not a big baseball fan, although she has a son who's a ringer and is a tremendous young baseball player. Shout out to you, Owen. But hitting .512, that's more than getting a hit every other at bat. I mean, that's incredible at any level.
Thank you for explaining that to me, Irwin, in such clear terminology.
Okay, but that is, if you hit 300 in baseball, getting 3 hits in 10 at bats, you're a great hitter.
That's good. That's good. Yes.
This is over 5 out of 10. It's off the, it's never been done. Like in baseball, 400 is a mystical number to hit. That hasn't been done since Ted Williams in 1941. I am a baseball fan. Okay. And
I'm fascinated.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm really glad. Now, Yaz graduated in high school, went on to attend Notre Dame on a scholarship for both baseball and basketball. And ultimately, after a year, the Red Sox were scouting him, and I think before or during his sophomore year.
Yeah, while he was still in his first year.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And they signed him, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but just to give you a little bit of we're going to get into his background before, but just to sort of sum this up, he was signed at this point for $108,000, Esperanza. That is, in 1958, for farmers in Bridgehampton, Long Island. That was money, real money.
No doubt.
Okay, so now if we go back, and this came from an article on Medium, which is just a platform, and Andrew Santon wrote this very recently, actually, in 2024, just to give you a little more background, because it gets a little into his family here. And Carl Yastrzemski, son of 2 Polish American parents. Father's name was Carol. They called him Carl as well. And his mother, Hattie, I can't even pronounce these names, Hattie Skowinski Yastrzemski. Families had been potato farmers in Poland, and the Yastrzemskis owned a 70-acre farm in Bridgehampton during this era. And it goes on, Andrew saying they didn't really, it wasn't about the summer people. They didn't really see them. These people were just hardworking families, never a lot of money, a lot of love, and a lot of potatoes, right? And again, Esperanza, we went over some of this in prior episodes. When 100 pounds of potatoes fetched $1.75, the Yastrzemskis did okay. $2, things were good. If it reached $2.25, they could buy a new car.
Yeah, it's an amazing sort of perspective and grounds person as to people's livelihoods, especially out here, which have become so distorted.
Really true. It goes on to say, as a young man, this is before the Notre Dame. Yeah, this is the father now, and we're going to talk about this. The father was really a star shortstop for a semi-pro team that played out of Riverhead, formed his own team called the Bridgehampton White Eagles. The father was the team founder, the manager, the general manager, the shortstop, the head scout, the groundskeeper, and the traveling secretary. And when his son Carl Jr. was 7, Junior became the bat boy. And
what great story.
Really, like, you could picture this, right? Like a farm family, like in such an, Esperanza, we paint a picture for our audience, right? Such an innocent time to be in Bridgehampton, Long Island. Farm families, I mean, really, that whole area. I mean, it was just farms touching other farms, right? I mean, in 1958, more or less.
Yeah.
And it goes on how the father, and again, we can't speak to whether this was overbearing or not. I mean, you might see this at Owen's own baseball games where the parents are getting a little too exuberant over watching their kids play.
There's exuberance, that's one word to put it, but encouragement is another. It seems that Carl Sr. had a frustrated career in baseball, no doubt, but the times were the times. I mean, this was Depression era, right? I mean, this was around the time where the Depression had hit hard. You're a farmer. I mean, all of this goes together to say he made a decision not to pursue that career. So to sustain his family, to live sort of vicariously through your offspring is, I don't know. I think look what he produced.
Oh, that's exactly. And the work paid off to the tune of not only getting a scholarship to a premier university, but $108,000 signing bonus, almost 68 years ago. For a small farming community, that was life-changing money at that era. In this place. I mean, it has to be.
Yes. I mean, and sorry to interrupt you one more time with the fact that, and we've touched on this, around this period of time, the 40s to 50s, even into the 60s, the area was kind of depressed. There was a lot of poverty, and despite the resort characteristics of the area still developing and even flourishing, so
That's right.
no doubt lifted this family out of a certain economic situation.
And, I'm so glad you brought that up, Esperanza, because it speaks, if we go back to our episode with Mark Torres, right, talking about the migrant farmers, and a
Correct.
lot of those farms and those stories were in Bridgehampton. And and so no question, this was, again, just a very different era. And I'm so glad we found this article. It was actually an article in Patch from 2011. It was written by Julie Green, and I think Julie Green, if I'm not mistaken, is now Southampton town historian, Esperanza.
That's correct. I
Right?
think she's also related, wife of Bayless Green, who
Okay.
attended school in Bridgehampton.
Okay, that's even better. And Julie wrote a terrific article, which really sort of ties a lot of this together, because Julie writes how she grew up in Cape Cod, on the Cape, and how her brothers and herself were, as she wrote it, weaned on Red Sox baseball. And obviously, we're going to know who their favorite player was. But Julie, I guess, being a historian, delved back a little bit further. And I think it's a good background to give our audience, Esperanza, telling a little bit about this. She refers to an Ernest Close, who lived from 1881 to 1957. Summer turned full-time resident photographer, wrote a column for the Bridgehampton News. I would love to see this, right? Called Wayfarings. He wrote it from 41 to 53. He chronicled Bridgehampton life. And Julie goes on to talk about this column written in July of 43 that illustrated the early days of Bridgehampton baseball as far back as the 1890s.
Wow.
Right? And now this author, Mr. Clowes, was alive at this time, having been born in 81. And he describes attending these baseball games very much a social event on a Friday afternoon, a manicured diamond on a field leased from the Howell farm.
A not so manicured baseball diamond.
A not so manicured. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Esperanza goes on to say how Main Street businesses closed up shop. The Reverend Arthur Newman was a regular attendant. They set up benches along the first baseline, cheering sections for women, girls, businessmen, summer residents. Games umpired. I mean, this is the sweetest story, right? I mean, umpired by Raymond Hildreth. A Hildreth, right? 400 to 500 people turning out for these games, Esperanza.
Yeah, I mean, what else was there to do on a Friday night? No, but I will say,
right?
We're visiting now every summer because, as you mentioned, my son is very, very keen with baseball, as is my husband. We will go to the collegiate games. We'll attend those. And as I'm hearing you describe this, I do think about how I'm really looking forward to going to Mash Park and attending these games that are just, you sit there in your lawn chair with your beverage at your side, and you shield yourself from the sun, and you watch these guys play their hearts out.
And there's a certain innocence that maybe isn't in Major League Baseball, right? There's a certain
there's just a soul to it.
Yes.
And also, Irwin, one thing that I always find is like you will be, it won't be the height of summer necessarily for these games, these collegiate games. But yes, there's all the traffic and the people and the bustle and of the season. But you go to this park and you go to one of these games, and I've been to one also at the Bridgehampton field behind the Bridgehampton High School.
Right.
And you feel so far removed from anything, quote unquote, Hamptons.
Yes.
Feel transported to another place in time, or not this place, another time, where things were simpler and you don't have all of that stuff going on. And it's great. And this is exactly that description. So it's nice to this continues in some way.
It's just so true. And, Esperanza, it just dawned on me, like tying in all of these things that we tied in, the legacy of the killer bees and everything else. I actually neglected to even mention Bridgehampton racing. The sports history.
In Bridgehampton
alone. Between the basketball team, Yaz playing there, reading the story that Julie Green wrote about the people so committed to watching these events, and we
Since
did that.
the late 1800s. I mean,
Yeah, and we did this the episode about how they raced in the streets in Bridgehampton, where the pedestrians would line the street watching the racing, and then it morphed into a track with world-class auto racing. I mean, hey, after 100 some odd episodes, Esperanza, we have to say it again. What is the special sauce here? Like that,
right,
all
exactly.
of it continues to just reinforce that message, right? Just really amazing. Julie continues to write how the home team during this era was called actually the Bridgehampton Nine. 9 players on a baseball team, right? And consisted of a roster of familiar names: Owl, Shank, Air, and players they recruited actually from neighboring villages. Just really a great story, and how in September 1896, this local paper reported that Bridgehampton won the championship of the East End at home, defeating the Peconic Nine by a score of 1-0. And wow,
That's a hard game.
yeah, and how about they talk about adjacent villages. They recruited a guy from Babylon was the starting pitcher. I mean, come on.
It must have been a relative.
Apparently a ringer also, because he in 1899 signed with the then New York Baseball Giants. But wow, just really such a rich history.
And no doubt that, I mean, Julie does say how golf became the sport of choice around here, but I will say baseball still rules.
I really think so also. And I'm looking at an East Hampton Star article, Esperanza, just to continue this theme of the legacy of sports in Bridgehampton. It's during these eras how the 6-man, now football has 11 players on a side, right? They had a six. Oh, wow. Okay. It was a rhetorical question. But they had a 6-man football team. I don't know, reading this, if that means all of the teams during this year where they only played with 6 players, or hey, we only had 6 players on an 11-player team. I don't know how to read it, but apparently this 6-man football team won 4 straight county titles between 1954 and 57. The rarely beaten basketball and baseball teams. And again, this is Yaz's era, right?
Yeah, this is when he was him, and this is Bridgehampton, right?
That's right. This is Yaz's era in Bridgehampton. That's when he was playing at the high school. Because remember, he went to Notre Dame in 58. So the rarely beaten basketball and baseball teams won 3 straight county. All of Suffolk County, okay?
From this one little hamlet.
Right? I mean,
near the tip of Long Island.
Bronza, they're competing with Huntington, Suffolk County, which had a population of who knows what.
Yeah, but
right?
Far larger.
Clearly, okay? The baseball team, a record of 29-1. And a tie between 55 and 57. The basketball team during this year, and again, Yaz was on all of these teams. Okay, a 35-game winning streak. Esperanza, I have to go now because ESPN just called. They want me to become a sports announcer on the team. Because, all right, I'm like the new Stephen A. Smith here. Okay.
Yes, you are reminding me.
But I mean, I can't help.
But it is very exciting.
Yes.
To read this, even if you don't know anything like myself about sports, or I shouldn't say nothing, but just not a lot. And it's very exciting, though, to read this history and think of these accomplishments. And Irwin, I just always do go back to thinking, like you mentioned Huntington, for instance, and I have actually said this to Owen, because he has a lot of his Little League games, and especially this year, are at the Bridgehampton field,
right?
Not the high school, but the one next behind the fire station, which is across the street from Yastrzemski's home.
That's right.
Okay, on School Street. So he'll complain about that field, about how the conditions, oh, it's dirt, oh, it's grass, oh, it's lumpy, oh, the ball bounces in all different places. I will say, and knowing nothing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that will make him a better player than if he had been playing on artificial turf from day one. I think hitting, as Yaz did, potatoes, or I think it was actually another person maybe that we'll be talking about, Jeff Gaiman, hitting tennis balls, hitting whatever, let it bat, just like practicing your heart out with whatever you have at hand will make you a better player, not all the equipment in the world that it costs a lot of money.
1,000%. And Esperanza, to that point, we've all heard, read, and as a sports fan, I've heard these kind of stories a million times. You know, the boy or girl growing up on a farm shooting baskets into a bushel because that's all they had, or the baseball player using a broomstick and
Right,
do
stickball,
right.
yeah.
So to that point, yes. You
Yeah.
know, talent is talent is talent, right?
Correct. And it can be nurtured in any way that does not
Yes,
require a tremendous investment and travel teams.
that is correct because many a person in many a sport, and again, not to go all too deep in the weeds, but you take a sport like tennis where that's normally you associate it more, you know, you need equipment, they're hard to get courts, certain level of affluence. But then you look at someone like the Williams sisters who went on public courts in Los Angeles that their father would drive all over to try to find. Talent is talent, right?
Yes. And practice is practice.
And practice is practice.
When I say investment, I meant money versus
correct.
Time is what you're investing.
Correct. And all of those stories really do come true. You know, we should really get into a little bit of what Jeff Gemmon said also. You mentioned him. Jeff was a guest on our show when we had a conversation about his book, I think, about growing up in Wainscott. But Jeff, and this was an article Jeff wrote, really great article he wrote for the East Hampton Star 9 years ago in 2017, and now Esperanza, you know Jeff better than I do. And you said actually before this episode started, this guy was an enormous Red Sox fan, right?
Yes.
A diehard.
He's just self-proclaimed and has written more than one article.
Right. Yeah. And he goes on here, and we're not going to go all too crazy here, but just he talks about how, you know, Jeff lived in Wainscott. And again, the proximity of Wainscott to Bridgehampton and Jeff being a huge Red Sox fan, he was really, and he goes back and relays all of these stories, how in the winter of 66, you know, his father took a break from building their house in Wainscott and parked outside the Yastrzemski family home with him in Bridgehampton and told him how Yaz made himself a major league hitter as a kid. And this goes into talking about what you were just saying when you're talking about Owen, hitting rocks after laying irrigation pipes on his father's farm, right? Swinging that sawed-off bat at tennis balls fired by grown men on the family baseball team. I could really picture that, right?
Of course. I mean, it's so vivid. It really is.
You know, and he just goes on. And now this was a great part of the story because how the South Fork, now we're going into when Yaz at this point is a pro, and, Jeff is talking about the 66. Yaz's real year was 67. I should tell our audience, Esperanza, since you said I should tell them. In the summer of 1967, when I was 9 years old, that was really when I became a baseball fan. And that was, the Red Sox had a season they call the Impossible to Dream season. They were finished in 9th place the prior year, and somehow, some way, they were in a pennant race. It was one of the greatest pennant races in baseball history. 4 teams down to the wire, literally to the last day of the season. One team made it from each league back then. There were no playoff systems, but the Red Sox ultimately won it. So it was really a special year, and I've always felt a connection personally to the Red Sox and Yaz, because Yaz hit 326, 44 homers, and 126 RBIs that year, Esperanza. Hit 301 the following year in 1968. Please don't ask me what I had for lunch.
I was just going to ask you.
I couldn't tell you. But when you're 9 years old, you remember things like that, right? You remember things like that. But, Jeff goes on how at this point, the South Fork was aware of Yaz, and there were dramatics. He was spoken about in the post office, at parties, where Jeff would go to a store where he bought what he called monster magazines. People would be talking about Yaz. So this kind of thing was going really hot and heavy.
He was the town without being in town.
He was the talk of the town, which is going to be a great segue when we close talking about Billy DePetris. But I just want to touch on this a little, how Jeff is talking about how rooting for Yaz on his home turf, right? This was his home turf. Being a Red Sox fan here, where Yaz was from, playing for a team that much of the East End of Long Island rooted for, over the
Mhm.
Yankees or over the Mets. Really?
Probably especially to our point earlier, which was you could really tune into that station from New England better than you could from New York, right?
Exactly, exactly. And he just, and I don't want to go too crazy here, but I touched on 1968 when Yaz won the batting crown the year after. It's really his signature year. My parents gave me a rare gift in 1968 after Yaz won his third batting title and saved the American League from the embarrassment of a season without a full-time hitter batting 300. Little sidebar, that was the year of the pitcher. And for whatever reason, pitchers ruled that year. But that October, Jeff Gemmon's father invited Yaz's parents to eat at their Wainscott home. And Jeff's mother, Pat, who was a native of England, treated the dinner like a State Department affair because Yaz's parents were coming over, buying a new set of plates at Hildreth's and serving ham because, after all, Polish people like ham, right? According to
Don't they,
Jeff.
dear? Like, yeah, like
Right? But just like
Jeff's
what a
description.
what a sweet story, right?
Right, but and he goes on to say that the Yaz's parents brought him a ball and a
that's
photograph signed by their son.
right.
And he proceeded to lose the ball in the Wainscott Woods within the week. I mean,
Ex-
can you imagine if one day, like, you're excavating for something or you just happen to come across
You know, Esperanza, I'm so glad you mentioned that because, again, it just harkens to how innocent times were. If you caught a baseball at a baseball game, you'd use that ball. You'd play with
Right,
that
right,
ball.
yeah, yeah, it's like the baseball cards that you would put in the bicycle spokes,
I,
right?
I
Yeah.
put baseball cards with a clothespin on my bicycle spokes to make that clack clack sound.
Right,
You know, it
right,
might have been a 1967 Mickey Mantle that now is
right.
worth $100,000, but we weren't thinking about that.
Yeah.
Esperanza,
Hardball did not exist then.
no, and Esperanza, kids today now buy a complete set of baseball cards and don't even unwrap them. They just,
I know.
right?
I know.
So who are the lucky ones, right? Who knows, right?
What are we always talking about? Community or commodity?
Right.
I mean, this story is about community.
That
This
is
is
so,
all about community.
that is such a, I love that. I didn't, that is so true though. Like this is so about community and that example is a great example of community versus commodity. That's very true. Really very fitting. But, Esperanza, we're going to start to wind this down as much as I hate to, because I got to tell you, this is a ride I'm loving. But
I know. I want to know more about this whole time period with Carl Yastrzemski. Truly.
I mean, it really is just, and I mean, I think we put it out to our audience as well as I can. But I got to tell you, I have like such an insatiable appetite for it. I feel like I'm not doing enough, but I'm going to try to see if we can really pull this together. Now, the New York Times in 1983 wrote not a long article, it was really almost a blurb, but it was all about Billy's Triple Crown restaurant in Bridgehampton. Now, I asked Esperanza beforehand if she remembers Billy's Triple Crown. She really didn't. Okay, but the DePetris family. This is Billy DePetris, is a long-time family on Eastern Long Island. Now, and Billy, now owner of this restaurant, by the way, named the Triple Crown because of Carl Yastrzemski's 1967 Triple Crown season.
Right. And they were classmates.
Yes, and teammates.
Teammates.
Billy was on the baseball team, probably on the other teams with Carl as well.
Probably,
I
yeah,
would bet
yeah.
anything. And a Triple Crown. Esperanza claims she doesn't know that much about baseball. She's knowing more than she lets on, but okay, I'm going to let her get away. The Triple Crown is when you win.
Isn't that with horses?
That is with horses, too. You are right. Yes, that's if you win. What is winning the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes? Esperanza, when I say to my wife, Rachel, I don't think I'm as much of a sports fan as I once was, she just looks at me and says, really?
Yeah.
Because
right.
apparently, right, and like you're doing right now, really, Erwin?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when
So,
you are so animated.
I know. Yeah, I mean, who's kidding who, okay? I mean, I am a big sports fan. But the Triple Crown in baseball was you won the batting title and you led the league in home runs and runs batted in. That was Carl Yastrzemski's 1967 season and the aptly named Billy's Triple Crown restaurant, where inside this restaurant was an 8-foot likeness of Carl Yastrzemski. Inside at the bar and the dining room. God, I would have loved to have been in this place. Esperanza, so many episodes coming to mind. Remember when we spoke about Bobby Vans with Matheson and Capote living there, the orange thingy, how we would have loved to have been in that room, right? I want to be in Billy DePetros's place now, right?
Yes.
I mean...
Yes. In the Yaz room.
In the Yaz room.
With a Yaz dog, Polish sausage, and served on Italian bread with sauerkraut, minus the sauerkraut for me.
Okay, but I'll still go with that sauerkraut. I'm the kind of thing I might regret later, but probably would taste really well going down. But Esperanza, 240 photographs, portraits, and cartoons devoted to baseball's 13, and there have only been 13 really? Triple Crown. And if I'm not mistaken,
even to this day,
I don't believe anyone has won the Triple Crown since Carl Yastrzemski. I'm going to Google that before this podcast is over, but I don't think, maybe it was won one other time, but I really don't think so. But yes, the Yaz room, as you so aptly with that delicious sandwich, and the restaurant belongs to Billy DePetros, and like we just said, baseball, football, basketball together at Bridgehampton High. One year, DePetros, how about this one? Petros was the pitcher. Threw 6 no-hitters. Yastrzemski was his catcher. And Esperanza, we spoke about how over his career he batted .512. How about one season?
Oh, I understand.
756, 7.5 hits out of 10 at bats.
And this was DePetros. Like, he was the one. He was also really good, right?
I mean, you don't throw 6 no-hitters at high school level not being good.
Incredible.
Okay? I mean, my God. I mean, he was, and you know, Esperanza, it sort of speaks to as good as DePetros was. Carl Yastrzemski was in a stratosphere that in Bridgehampton baseball lore, in East End baseball lore, hasn't been seen since. I remember there was a player, here's me saying I'm not a baseball fan, right? But there was a player from Springs that was drafted, played in the major leagues, but really I can't think of his name it'll come to me afterwards, but did play in the major leagues, but didn't have, not an extended career. I mean, he made the major leagues an enormous accomplishment, but Yastrzemski this is a guy mentioned in the same names as, Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. I mean, he's in that stratosphere, but so it goes on talking about Yastrzemski, the perfectionist. And DePetros, this is a really great thing to relay. As long as I've known him, if he went 3 for 4 one day, he'd want to go 4 for 4 the next day. I knew when he was 13 years old, he was going to make it big.
I love that he has this admiration for his friend and former, and teammate, versus like it wasn't competitive. I mean, that's really, I don't know. I think that's so refreshing and just speaks volumes for a friendship.
Couldn't agree with you more. And it really is just amazing. I take it back. Miguel Cabrera did win the Triple Crown in 2012. That was
14 people since.
So there's now 14 people. 14 people, and let it be said.
And only one more in the past 40 years.
45 years, only one other player won it. So since in the last 59 years, Carl Yastrzemski, Miguel Cabrera. So those are your only 2 Triple Crown winners in the past 45 years. So that's pretty crazy stuff. But longer than that, in the past 59 years, I take it back. But
and let me just say,
please do. Yes.
Miguel Cabrera, I'll say it in Spanish. Miguel Cabrera, hello, is from Venezuela.
The winners of the 2026 World Baseball Classic, I might add.
I'm not biased.
We're not biased, exactly. But exactly right. And I guess, Esperanza, we should really close this episode with saying that there was a field named after Bridgehampton, after Carl Yastrzemski in Bridgehampton. There's a historic marker, I should put it this way, honoring Carl Yastrzemski as one of the greatest baseball players of all time at Bridgehampton High School's new baseball field. And this was April of 2022, right?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's wonderful that that's there.
Yes.
I would think that hopefully people read it and are inspired. I mean, I am sure there are many people who don't even know who.
That's right.
He is.
Right,
So hopefully we can introduce someone to, I mean, even if you're not a baseball fan,
right,
this is great
right,
history.
right. And we will mention also now Carl is almost 87 years old, and I think even during his playing days or right after he retired, moved to Florida. But to the best of my knowledge, has not really been back here much or at all. I'm not sure. There is still Yastrzemski's out here. We had, I think, Southampton town trustee or
Mhm.
maybe a board member that was a Yastrzemski. So I know the family name is still out here, but as far as Carl himself, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's been back much. But whether he has or hasn't, the legacy certainly lives on, and going to be hard pressed to match a talent like this really in virtually any sport to come out of here again. I mean, this was a once in a lifetime kind of player.
And really amazing, as I think you pulled from another article about the legend of a Long Island potato farmer, and apparently has summed it all up with a rather simple explanation. I'm just a potato farmer from Long Island who has some ability.
That's
And I I think that's such a great statement to make. I mean, the humility of it and the accepting of your talent, but not gloating. I love it.
and a perfect place to close that episode. Thank you so much for that quote was on my mind, and I'm so glad you found that and just said that because it really is so fitting and it does speak to the humility and just really, I'm just going to leave it there. I can't add to it. It's a beautiful comment and really what a great, I really was enthused about this episode, Esperanza. That was really
I'm so glad.
so much fun to
That we
talk
did it.
about. Esperanza, we should also tell our audience, for someone that claims to be such a non-baseball fan, you were the one that suggested, why don't we do an episode on Carl Yastrzemski? To our Hamptons podcast audience, don't, as we all know how modest Esperanza is, but really she came up with this idea. Despite me knowing Carl Yastrzemski's statistics from '67, so it was a great idea. Thank you for thinking of it.
Well, it's my pleasure, but please know that I'm a good spectator. I get
Okay.
really into it. So that's really where it comes from. And I love the history. Like I said, this is such a great story. How could you not be into this?
I may have to.
Now that I know the numbers and understand them better,
There you
thank
go. There you go. I may have to come with you one day and check out Owen on the field this summer too.
you. Oh,
We're
you must.
going to have to work
You
that one
must.
out.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thanks so much, Esperanza.
Okay, Arwen, until next time.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.